Hello, hello.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here at Davos and all of you that are watching online, of course. I would say last but not least, we're the grand finale of today.
Amazing.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be hosting Samir Ibrahim, CEO and co-founder of Sun Culture. He will let us know what Sun Culture is. He's a young entrepreneur, and we're happy to be hosting you.
Thank you very
here
much.
at the Greek House Davos. So I would like to start by, first of all, we're discussing about climate change and its impact on the food safety, one of the main topics of today, and of course, top on the agenda of the World Economic Forum in general. So I would like to start just by saying that climate change poses significant challenges to global food safety. We see very high temperatures. We see alternation of severe drought periods and heavy rains, and very frequent extreme weathers, which is something that is obviously affecting farming practices, crop production, and the nutrition quality of food crops. And I would finish by saying that we all know that the Copernicus Climate Change Service confirmed the fact that 2023 was the hottest year on record. So I would like to start by asking, first of all, I think this, I'm not sure you would be expecting that question, but could we see climate crisis as an opportunity to, like maybe for the rebirth of farming?
Thank you very much for having me. Intimate conversations are always much more fun because you can kind of engage a little bit more, so thank you very much. So yes, in short answer, yes. I always feel funny saying something like, you can have a good opportunity from a crisis, but I think climate change is forcing us to be better. We got away for a very long time doing things that put us in the same crisis we're in today. Agriculture and food systems and related industries to food contribute to 80 to 85% of global greenhouse gas emissions. We're here because of the way our food system is set up. So climate change is forcing us to do better. So it is in a sense a rebirth in so many ways. You can have a rebirth for the soil, so we can grow more soil. We can have a rebirth in the way that we think about our land. We can have a rebirth in the way we think about our food practices. Many, many different rebirths, but it certainly is an opportunity that we're forced to take. So it's almost it's forcing our hand. We have no choice. I don't know what you call an opportunity when it's not when you don't have a choice to choose it. It's sort of, you kind of have to. But in one sense, the optimistic way to say it is an opportunity.
So your company, and I would like you to tell us more about that, promises 300% greater crop yields using 80% less water. How can this be achieved?
So it's not magic. It's irrigation. So I'll tell you about my business, but there are many, many smallholder farmers around the world. There's 2.5 billion people living in smallholder farming households. So these are people who have very small farms relative to the farms where I grew up in. So they're 1, 2, or 3 acres.
Where is that?
All over the world.
I mean, where you grew up?
I grew up in the U.S.
Okay.
In the United States, small farms are quite big. And they're 1, 2, or 3 acres. They're off the grid and they're rural areas. In order to grow food and keep crops, they need water. Most people get water around the world using irrigation, which is taking water from one place and moving it to another place. But and they do that because irrigation can increase yields by actually 5 times. It's a very, farming is an algorithm. It's a math problem. There's only one variable that changes all the time, which is water. So by controlling the amount of water that your crops have, you can increase your yields. So those promises that we're making are because irrigation has been known for a very, very long time. The problem that we face is that on the continent that has the most unused farmable land, which is Africa, where 2/3 of the population are involved in farming and we have enough water to increase our irrigation, the water pumps are too expensive and the fuel's too expensive. So of the 700 million people living in smallholder farming households in Africa, only 4% irrigate. versus 37% in Asia, which is why we have a food crisis in many countries around Africa and why we aren't able to produce enough food to feed the world. So what we do is we take a very old, unsexy technology, which is irrigation. We decarbonize it, so we switch from diesel and petrol pumps to solar, and then we deploy it in resource-rich environments like in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's how you get your increase in yields, where you save water, you save money, farmers are making much more food, they're happier, they're healthier.
How can you please tell us in general, how can technology and AI probably, I don't know if you can integrate AI. I'm sure you can.
AI is a very big topic in the Congress. It's people joke it's an AI conference right now.
True.
Yeah, there's like a food and nature and climate track, and then there's like a big AI track. So it's either people. Yeah, it's a big one over here.
I would restrict it by saying that how can we use smart technology, how can we achieve smart farming? How do you achieve smart farming?
So farming is a very old industry. It's the industry that created civilization. Once we learned how to farm in one place, we stopped being nomadic. So cities formed from farming. So it's one of the oldest industries. I think so many times people try to over-engineer problems. They try to add too much technology. But we have to think about it from first principles. What does a customer need? So if you're looking at emerging markets, which is where we work because there's a lot of need, you ask farmers what they need. They need a few things. They need irrigation, they need financing, they need inputs, they need access to market. So when you think about how to do this, there's a lot of digital tools that we can use. 86% of our customers have a smartphone. So how can we use digital tools to create marketplaces, digital marketplaces? How can we use AI to help map where farmers are growing, what they're growing, to connect them to marketplace? How can we use sensors to pick up where pest breakout are coming, and we can predict where pests might break and where there might be disease that spreads? So for me, when you look at new technologies to make farming smart, it's all about understanding what are the basic needs and how do we take existing technology on top of that. I don't think we need new technology to make farming smart for a majority of the world. For the 2.5 billion people who live in smallholder farming households that grow the food that we're eating here, actually. So I think it's taking existing technology and deploying it in places that are hard to operate. It almost becomes an operational problem.
Or probably just to be monitoring better, but in a better way.
Yeah. In Africa, there are 8 times fewer weather stations than what's recommended by the World Meteorological Organization. So there's a lot of work to do, but it's taking things that work in other places of the world and just deploying it there. Now, the reason it's hard to deploy is because there's no ecosystem. Banks don't lend. Infrastructure is not that great. You have no track record there. Policies are changing. So the hard part is actually operating. How do you get something affordable enough for a smallholder farmer? For the people that we're talking about from a food insecure perspective, affordability is key. You're talking about the poorest people in the world. So it's really operational and financial innovation with existing technology that can solve it. Now, I'm not saying don't go build new technology. I think new technology is amazing. But I do believe that we can solve these problems with existing technology.
That is very interesting, and I like being more traditional. I like this approach. So could you please tell us why are food systems so important to areas that do not suffer from food insecurity?
That's so interesting. You know, we're here in Davos, and there are a lot of people who come from very wealthy places who are engaging in conversations around food systems. And it's very interesting to see the engagement, and they should, because food security is national security. Food security is national security within your country and across borders, and here's why. If people don't have access to affordable food, whether they're farmers or whether they're people living in cities, they have to go somewhere else to find food. And you see, if you look at a lot of the political instability that's happened over the last 10 years, Madagascar, Haiti, Egypt, Syria, a lot of the armed conflict and political unrest was caused because of forced climate migration. It was too hot, there was no rain, people couldn't grow food. They rushed to cities, and there were riots.
Food is life.
Food is life. And you look at a lot of the challenges that countries in Europe face with migration. mostly caused by food-related forced migration. So if you want to, I think one of the biggest risks that we have in the world, we're talking about AI safety a lot, biotechnology risk. I think one of the biggest risks we have is massive forced migration because people can't survive with food. Imagine the Arab Spring happening in 10 countries at once. That would be very, very bad for the world. So food security is national security, both in your country and outside your country, because if there's political stability in one country, it'll trickle over into others.
What solutions can we find to solve these problems?
So the solutions exist. I've been doing this for the last 11 years. And I've talked to many, many governments and funders and farmers and policymakers. The problem is coordination. For the last decade in agriculture technology, we've had a spray and pray approach. Very small investments to try many things to see what works. It's a good idea, it's natural. We know what works now. I think the challenge is how do we allocate the right amount of capital to make big bets? How do we make bigger national level food security programs? And it's coordination. So I'll talk about Africa because I know that very well. In the developed countries around the world, agriculture is subsidized. Where you come from, agriculture subsidized. Where I come from, agriculture subsidized. In the EU, every farmer gets over 4,000 euros in cash subsidy per year, let alone the fertilizer subsidy and access to financing, etc. In Africa, there are no subsidies. Governments are spending their revenues paying off debt. So you're not only dealing with people who are the most underserved in the world, but they don't have access to the incentives to buy things. So the challenge with coordinating capital comes in that you need subsidies that are non-government. You need the right type of equity and the right type of debt. So one thing we've done is we launched our carbon business. So we sell carbon credits to corporates and governments, and we use those revenues to subsidize our technology. So it's really just thinking about how do you get the right money in the right place to make it happen. So my view is if you have the right money, you can solve these problems.
Next question is a bit difficult to reply in a few minutes, but I'm sure you will have the best answer. How much could we say that it would cost to solve the food crisis problem?
It's very easy. I've done the math, actually. So I'll talk about it from a Kenya perspective, then I'll talk about it from a global perspective. I love this stuff. It's also, I love it because it shows how little money is actually required. Now, I'm going to simplify things very much. Food security and food systems are very complex. You talk about land rights, you talk about biodiversity, you talk about nutrition versus calories. It's very complex. If you simplify it, there are a few parts of food. You have production, then you have availability, and then you have affordability. Grow the food, make sure people have access to it, make sure they can afford it. I'll talk about production first. So in Kenya, we mapped out how many irrigation systems we would need to deploy in order to get the country to be 100% food secure from a production standpoint, taking a lot of assumptions, but we took the assumptions. The number is 274,000 acres of irrigation. That will only cost $219 million over 5 years to get a country to be food secure from a production standpoint. Now think about that. $219 million is nothing.
It's interesting what you're saying.
One aid agency spent in 2022, in 1 year, $310 million for food relief in Kenya. So those are the numbers compare. Now, if you map this out for the whole world, and the way we did this was just look at the calorie gap in the entire world and looked at, again, very simply, deploying solar irrigations to grow enough food to feed the world. We didn't look at distribution. We didn't look at affordability, just production. The cost is as much as it costs to run a World Cup, which is $13 billion. Even if these numbers are off by 100%, 2 World Cups worth of funding to produce enough food to feed the world. It's not that much money. It's really now thinking about how do we engage with policymakers to take that bet.
Yeah, that would be my next question. What is the role of governments and funders in that problem solving.
Governments who have money, the role is money. Governments who don't have money, it's creating stable policies and incentives. You can't go ask a government. I was on the board of the Kenya Revenue Authority last year, which is the authority responsible for revenue generation, tax collection. And I see from the inside what happens when countries are spending a lot of their money on debt repayments. You can't go ask a government for money. So what you do is you say, remove VAT and duties and do a big national marketing campaign. Get them to have skin in the game. Let it be their program. For governments that have money, ask for a subsidy. But it's really important for funders. You need donors, you need carbon buyers, and you need private investors to all come together. And they don't talk to each other very much. So we're now experimenting at WEF to say, look, if we bring you all together, why not take an experiment? Take a bet. It's not a big bet. Take a small bet that could have massive impact. And if it works, you could replicate this across multiple countries. Imagine Africa being the food basket for the world. Imagine taking these ideas and replicating it in Europe and in the Middle East and in Latin America and Southeast Asia. You can have regional hubs of food baskets. It's very doable. It's just people would have to then take a bet. No one likes being wrong on a bet. So people don't like taking bets. So now it's trying to convince people to take bets when, as a human, you don't want to be wrong. And it's really convincing people that it's either you're wrong or you're right. And if you're right, you win. If you're wrong, you don't win. If we don't make the bet anyway, you lose anyway. So might as well make the bet. Chances are better if you make a bet that you'll be right than if you don't.
And I would like you to, in a way, summing up, to tell us what makes your company innovative and what made you create it. What was the first?
Yeah. So our company is innovative. We're the first solar irrigation company in Africa. We're the first company to lend for any solar agriculture assets for farmers. We're the first solar irrigation carbon project in Africa. We're now the largest distributor of solar irrigation for farmers in Africa. I think it's pretty innovative. It's quite interesting.
It is.
My family's from East Africa, so I always had what I call immigrant child guilt. I always wanted to figure out how to do better. I didn't understand why my parents didn't have the opportunities that I had growing up in the US. I didn't understand why they didn't have money. I didn't get it. There's money everywhere. Why didn't you have money? And I wanted to figure out how to fix that for many, many people. So there wasn't one moment where I said, I'm going to solve this problem. It was a series of how I grew up. My parents put me in a lot of volunteer work, and it's just over time, you kind of develop this idea that you can, this sounds very cliche, but you can do well by doing good. I hate buzzwords and phrases like that, but you grow up with that idea, and then someone showed me the numbers, and we're going to be in a food crisis if we don't do something, and it seemed like a big enough problem for me to spend a lot of time in.
And last question, what is your dream about that company? Or another company?
I think I'll talk outside of my company. And you can take these frameworks for a lot of other types of companies. I'm talking about irrigation because irrigation is a very good first step for farmers. But you can think about this for healthcare and education. It's how do you take existing technology and democratize it in across the world? And my dream is baked into the vision, our vision statement. So our vision statement is to develop a world where people can take control of their environments in rewarding and sustainable ways. And what that means is where people have choice. 2.5 billion people wake up every morning, and the first thing they think about is, where's my water today? I have to solve my water problem for my kids. Every day, 2.5 billion people. That's more people than that were on the planet when the Titanic sank. They wake up every day and say, I need to solve my water problem. So for me, my dream is that everyone wakes up in the morning with a choice of what they do with their time and without living in fear of not being able to provide basic needs for their families. Too many people wake up living in fear. I won't even talk about the political challenges and the wars going on right now. But my dream is that people wake up with a choice and without fear. And we'll play our small part in doing that. And I hope we inspire more people to do it. We need 30 more sun cultures in, 12 more industries to start solving these problems. And we'll do our part to share our story, to work with folks at the Greek House like this to share our story to more people, and hope we can inspire the next entrepreneur, the next set of entrepreneurs to do things.
I hope you do that. I'm
so.
sure you'll do that.
Thank you.
We will be very happy to take some questions,
Sure.
of course, if there are some. But I think you were
Thank you.
perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's such an honor. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
Brilliantly executed in terms of your analysis and explanation for people who are not familiar with the industry.
Thank you very much.
Just wanted to say one thing I liked what you said was when you said you have to think about things from first principles. Adams up approach, like what is the essence of the problem? And you explained it very eloquently. I just wanted to say, excuse me, I think that there's, with regards to the amount of money, if I can just ask you a question.
Yeah.
You said that two World Cups.
Yeah.
My question to you is, sorry for being long-winded.
No.
Just to give you context, the question is, if it is such a small amount of money, perhaps there's a reason it hasn't been spent. Maybe it's intentional. What could the reasons be if you were to hypothetically, sorry to ask the question like that, but I just mean, thank you.
I think there's a lot of reasons. I don't go down the conspiracy route often, but I believe that there's this like paradox of choice. Like there's so many things to try to choose from. There's so many problems to solve. There's so many things that as a human we're not created to be able to process all of that, let alone process the climate crisis. I mean, it's very big and very complex. You talk about things like permafrost, all the way to your kids are going to die because of a fire. It's a very complex. There's a lot. Arctic ice melting, soil permafrost, food insecurity. I mean, it's a very complex issue. And we're not built to process these very long-term, very complex challenges. We're meant, humans were designed to process in-your-face problems. So I think you have one problem that there's a paradox of choice. There's too many things to choose from. I don't know what to put my money in. I want to make the best choice. And there's too many things to choose from. There's too many compelling statements and arguments for why the money should go there. And then, wow, this is really complex. I don't know where to start. I think that's why things freeze. You start to see a little bit more big bets being taken, but I think we need more. Like it's just, we need people saying, okay, we're gonna choose 5 big ideas in a sector and just go after those for the next 5 years. And if they don't work, we'll go for the next one. It's sort of like a 5 for 5 instead of trying everything. Let's just choose 5, and collectively as a community, with billions and billions and billions of dollars under management, let's pick 5 things and go hard, just right into it. But that takes this level of coordination that I'm trying to understand why I'm here. I'm trying to understand how to get that to happen. I'm very curious about the coordination issue. I don't know why it doesn't happen. There are conversations happening. I'm seeing them. I'm in the conversations. There are people talking. The right people are talking about the right things, and it's there. It's physically happening. I mean, I'm seeing it. It's just now what's the next step, and I don't know the answer yet. But maybe after tomorrow I will, or if not, I'll continue to try to find it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
It was an honor, and I'm sure you will be creating more and more in the future.
I hope so. Thanks very much,
Thank you
everybody.
as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.